How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk Live, Season 1, Episode 4, I think. And I'm getting the alerts now that we're live. Today's going to be a great episode, guys. We're going to be talking about finding our mentor or becoming a mentor. It can go both ways. Now, of course, my phone's going to keep on going off because the alerts are going. So let me just shut that off. I think it's a very important dialogue because a lot of us, when we enter this profession, we tend to be a little bit lost. It's also when we're most vulnerable. So it's a great time to really find someone that you can connect to. But it's not just that. Also, if someone does choose to connect to you, being that mentor, how important of a role that is, and it should be something that you never take lightly. And the funny thing is there could be times when you don't even know that you are a mentor to someone. So anytime you have a chance to provide some influence or some direction and guidance, it should always be done in a manner that shows value to the person who's receiving it. Now, guys, real quick before I bring on my sponsors, hold on. It's live. Can't edit that out. Before I bring out my guests, because we always have the usual co-hosts with me, we're going to have Russ Hamilton and Connie Eileen. I just got it put out who sponsors the video. So we have Guardian RFID from inmate tracking and cell checks to cloud-based business and artificial intelligence. Guardian RFID digitally transforms jails, prisons, and juvenile detention facilities of every size. Visit Guardian RFID for more information. And also, guys, if you're seeking higher education and you want to bring experience into the classroom, American Military University, they have been with me since day one. They're a big fan of what we do in corrections, and they're a big fan of making sure that we have more people with experience teaching those young minds. All right, guys. So now to go right into the topic. And guys, we're going to stay focused on the topic for about an hour, maybe. Now, you guys can ask questions all along the way related to that topic. And then after that hour, we'll go ahead and take questions that may venture off the topic. So that will be part of the open questions. I guess after an hour into the show, we'll do that. I just want to try to keep the topic, keep in line with the topic, because as you said, the people that are going to click this video when it does get posted, they're going to be expecting to see what that topic's about. And then after that, we could venture off and answer whatever questions you have after that. But first, let me bring on, let's bring on Connie. Oh, Connie, you're so small. Hold on, Connie. Let's fix that. What's up, Connie? You're muted.
I know you were happy to do that.
I love it.
Hi, everybody. Connie Eileen here. I am the founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy. I'm also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall and the author of The Cage Was Her Cocoon. I just want to give a shout out to all the folks who are taking training. I've been on this whole sort of, campaign of getting civilian employees signed up, and it's been working. So thank you, everyone, all the different facilities who's giving Civilian Corrections Academy the opportunity. Thank you.
And guys, great training, man. It really is. So, and by the way, the more we train our civilians, the more they'll be in line with the safety and security concerns. Ultimately, we have a safer facility. We also have none other than Russ Hamilton. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. Glad to be here. Today, just looking that I'm coming up on 5,000 members in Keepers of Chaos. I'm at 4.6 something right now. So happy to report that, and be glad to delve into this topic about mentors, mentoring, mentorshipping, all that kinds of stuff.
Now, the great thing here, guys, real quick, I'm doing everything at once here, is that we actually have invested our time in mentoring others. Russ on Keepers of Chaos, if you guys remember Facebook, Russ actually has a mentoring program, which is great. And none of this stuff costs anything. So basically, if you're in the group and you want to connect with somebody that has some experience, you have all these people that want to help. It was crazy because Russ kind of thinks of this suggestion. And then all of a sudden, right, Russ, all these people come in wanting to help.
Absolutely. And one of the great things that I'll say that Keepers of Chaos is kind of a little bit different in is that it's specifically oriented not maybe specifically toward mentoring, but towards, furthering the profession being, what should I do? Can I get some advice? Can I share some advice? you know, what would you do? And just a whole list of, you know, history and content knowledge and a million other things. And really, it's amazing the number of people in my forum that step up to the plate and get in there. And I mean, they're in the arena of ideas and they're just putting stuff out there, and they're always willing to share their time. And we have thousands of people like this. So Keepers of Chaos, I think if you've been in some of the other forums, they're great. But I think really as far as something that helps the profession along, I think Keepers of Chaos is where it is.
All right, guys. Now I want to give out some shout outs. What's up, Andy V? What's up, Andrew? Good to see you guys again. Chris Forentino. Good to see you. Donna, Daryl Smith. We also got Dylan Smith, Miss Chips Ahoy. What's up, Miss Chips Ahoy? 65 Crippler. Oh, no, I'm sorry, 65. Right? Guys, since I broke over 40, my eyesight is just doesn't pick up things the way it used to. That's 65 is actually GS. I want you guys to know that. So the G became a 6 and the S became a 5. And GS Crippler, what's up? Christina, Steve Maynard, of course. The mentor should always be assigned to every new hire. So let's do this. So before we freeball on this topic, what's up, Brian? Brian Roback out of New York. So Andy V does have a question which relates directly to the topic. So what I'll do is I'll go with Connie first, go to Rustin and myself. So we could take the first question. It's perfectly in line with what we're going to discuss. But Andy says, what are some of the best things I can do to establish myself with my mentor and build trust with other coworkers? I think that's a great question and definitely something, great way to open up the show. Thanks, Andy, for that great question. All right, Connie.
Thanks. So I think one of the first things you want to do is really just observe, right? Because the mentor-mentee relationship is all about the relationship. So before you jump in and just ask anyone to be your mentor, you want to make sure that your values, your goals, that person's skill set, they kind of all align. You know, I think the good news about a mentor is really that the mentor is really focused on like building that relationship, and they're focused on the experience, right? And so because the mentor has experience and they could provide you with the guidance that you might be needing, what I would say is once you've identify the person or persons that you want to be mentored by, you want to have some very informal conversations with them to really make sure that you both align and that they have the time, right? Because this relationship, the building and cultivating of this relationship will take time. And to build that trust, it's going to take you some time. The other thing that I would just say is that once you're able to build that trust, you want to make sure that the lines of communication are open and that you're being transparent, and that, ultimately you are also offering and being vulnerable with your mentor, right? Because the mentor is giving you all that they have essentially to try to help you get to where you want to be and establish your goals and your objectives.
Yeah, and you know what? Before we go to Russ, I want to mention something. Look what Connie said about being a mentor, being a mentee. It involves time, investment in each other. And I'm saying in each other because the mentor also benefits from this relationship. A lot of people think that the mentor and mentee relationship is one way. It's not. I've had the chance to mentor a few people, specifically one who's starting to make their way to where one of the goals were that we had set. And it becomes so rewarding to not just share in the success, because that's another great thing, but also to know along the way how much I have improved. So I think one of the things that you're looking for in a mentor, if I may, is a mentor that is teachable, that in the process they're willing to grow as well. But Russ, what's your thoughts?
Okay, so we're talking about this system, mentor, mentee. In some aspects, in some areas, in the different ways people do things and stuff, it might be a formalized thing. It might be something informal. Those particular words in a lot of situations may not ever come up. You just may have someone that you look up to. One of the ways that this gets distributed in a more formal way that we don't use the mentor-mentee terminology is when you have FTOs, right? And those FTOs, they have the spot, they're specifically assigned, And those are the people that you deal with as a mentee, as being able to, learn what this craft is. As you learn this craft, as you progress, as you get towards that spot where you finally are on the verge of becoming a journeyman, right? Journeyman is not the pinnacle of this. It's, having absolute mastery of being a correctional officer. And the only way that you can truly become a master is to do what Anthony said there, right? And that's to actually take and pass your knowledge and your learning on. So it's an important thing for the mentors to be able to do. That's actually, part of the way, by going out there and knowing what they know and being able to pass that on to teach someone else to become that final master.
You want to hear something funny? I was trying to work on a book on leadership, and again, still in the process of doing that, but I kind of shift my focus to what you need to know on your first day in corrections. I think that's one of the most asked questions that come my way. So I'm working on it. And once Connie, she's going to submit a great story that's going to kind of reflect exactly what I need. Then I'll move on to the second chapter. But it's going to be a book that's going to kind of state my thoughts, but then we're going to find a way to apply it through the different stories that are told. But one of the things I want to mention about being a mentor is that we talked about it taking time, and there's a process. That means that you yourself, who's going to be a mentor, has to do exactly what's written right here. Decide that people are worth the effort. Because sometimes people, they don't even know they need a mentor. They could just one day ask a question and, you take the time to answer that question in such a manner that person winds up coming to you again and again. And next thing you know, there is an unofficial mentor and mentee relationship. For my first experience, I want to share a story, if I may. I had when I first started in corrections, I remember having to work a third shift, an overtime. So for us, third shift would be 10 to 6 a.m. And there was a senior officer who just, every time you went into his unit, he just had a bunch of officers there. Now, this officer was about 1 year away from retiring, so everybody was pretty much a rookie to him. And every time you go in his unit, no matter how late it was, everybody was going over there just chatting. And at one point, I'm thinking, well, they're only going here because he has coffee. Because us third shifters, we love our coffee. But then there were times when he didn't have coffee. And people were still find themselves there chatting away. And then I'm thinking like, wow, there's something about this guy. He provides us with energy or whatever it is. So I remember one day, as I was doing my rounds, he was watching me. I was actually relieving him. So when he came back in for me to kind of leave, I started finishing my rounds. And he said, hey, let me show you something real quick. And I said, okay. So he takes the flashlight and he did a little thing where he put his foot against the door, shined the flashlight by the lock, and then went ahead and checked inside the room by putting the flashlight up and then bringing it down, a whole process. Now, of course, learning from someone like that, basically they just give you direction, A to B to C. He wasn't just about that. He told me why. The reason why he puts his foot on the door and checks the lock is because at the beginning of his career, an inmate was able to open the door because it wasn't properly locked, and he got banged up pretty good. And then he talked about the reason why he goes from the bottom or the top to the bottom so he can light up the whole room and exactly know where the inmate is instantaneously instead of searching for the inmate. The why, to me, is something I still remember to this day. He taught me the importance of it's not about how or what, but why. To me, when it comes to having that relationship with a mentor, I hope you find the people that teach you the why, because the why to me is something that you never forget. It's evergreen. It stays with you for the rest of your career. And then you wind up teaching whys to everyone else. And this why, by the way, before I go back to Connie, is this why comes from experience. Now, he retired, guys. He's been retired for many years. I got over 20 years in the business. So, he retired probably a year or two when I was in, so maybe 18 years ago. But I still remember that as if it was only yesterday because he took the time to show me and tell me why the things had to be done. Connie, if you're choosing to mentor somebody, do you believe that people that have that relationship, that mentor to mentee, the person that's choosing to be a mentor, do you believe that they have to have some level of investment in people? You're muted again, Connie. This is live, Connie. It's live. We're losing subscribers. I had 20. We're down to 9.
Oh my God, cut it out.
Come on.
So, absolutely. I think that what we need to be able to focus on is that when we are really super focused on people development, it makes for building those relationships much more easier, much more simpler. And I think that the reward comes in looking at the whole person who, so just to bring something into the mix, right? So when there's this mentor-mentee relationship, a lot of times people think that if you're the leader, that you control that dialogue, right? Whereas in that mentor-mentee relationship, it is actually the mentee who kind of controls that, right? Because if as the mentor, I'm there to serve you, right? I'm there to pour my knowledge, my expertise, my advice, my guidance. I'm pouring into you. You have to know exactly what it is you want. Like if you're telling me this is what I need, here are my deficits, or here are my areas for opportunity and development, right? As the mentor, I have to be invested in wanting to pour into you so that you could be your best self on the job.
Hey, Connie, you hit on something that was spot on. I don't want that to be overlooked. The mentee does control the relationship. One of the things I've been reading about, and they're talking about how to develop that relationship of trust between the mentor and mentee. They put a lot of the weight on the mentor. They do. They say that the mentor should be in line with that person's vision. It's not just about you as the mentor, but what does this person have values for? What are their beliefs? What is it that they're looking to accomplish? And I have a feeling a lot of people believe it's the mentor that's in control. Russ, what's your thoughts on what Connie said about the mentee controlling the relationship?
Well, it's up to that mentee to get what they feel that they need, to get what they want out of it. The problem with that aspect of it is many times it's a situation of, you don't know what you don't know yet. So are you smart enough to really decide what it is that you actually need? If you have a mentor that's, really on the ball and understands the ins and outs of the business, they can steer you toward that and give you a little bit more insight, because when you start off in this career, you're pretty blind. You think but you really don't.
Yeah. And Connie, I just want to touch on, just to kind of in line with what you said about the mentee controlling the relationship. I like what Russ also put the balance on too, because there is some balance, right? I mean, the mentee is obviously a blank slate, right? They're looking for direction. They're looking for guidance, right? But and then you have the mentor who's able to provide that. But I believe they provide it in a way that's in line with how the mentee can receive that information. You basically want to be able, as you're mentoring, you also want to motivate them. You want to make sure that, you yourself are in a position to mentor, because there are sometimes, guys, I'm going to tell you something. I love corrections, but I hate corrections. It is what it is. And when you're investing in someone and you're trying to mentor them and you're trying to, teach them to, kind of cross into those leadership positions, you have to make sure that you are on point with that energy level. Because at the end of the day, you're not in a position to mentor anybody if you are disgruntled. I mean, I'm being honest with you. I just, but it's true. You have to find every day a reason to love this profession. And some cases, I'm going to tell you something right now, guys. Sometimes that mentor-mentee relationship can also give us a chance to re-energize ourselves. It's a benefit both ways, because maybe that gives me a chance to, as a leader, it's what they call servant leadership, right? In the end, I'm serving others, creating an impact on others. But Connie, one of the things that John Maxwell says is when you're mentoring, the mentor and the mentee, the mentor has to make sure that the process includes things that the mentee values. So how does the mentor figure that out? And, how do they go ahead and include that in that relationship?
So I'm going to answer that question, but I also wanted to just mention that there's times in that mentor relationship where the mentor becomes the coach, right? And so they aren't mutually exclusive. when the mentor becomes a coach, the coach is kind of focused on a particular task or focused on a specific skill that they're trying to build, that they're encouraging, and that they're kind of directing the learning of that mentee. And so to Russ's point, I just wanted to say there is that balance where, you know, the mentee may not know exactly what they don't know, right? And so it kind of gives that mentor, you know, another aspect of being a mentor, which is also being that coach, that trainer, that's sort of helping them get to where they need to be and being able to identify those things that they just don't know. So I think that's something I just wanted to mention and make sure that we were kind of just aligned on that. Now, as far as there being alignment with the things that the mentor and the mentee value, I think that happens, I think, organically. As you begin to build that relationship, you begin to understand, like, what makes this person tick? What are the things that are really important to them? What are some of their triggers? What are some of the things that, you know, or some of the spaces where they're vulnerable for whatever reason, right? And I think a good mentor is going to explore. They may dig a little bit just to kind of get to the root cause of that and figure out how they can be of best support to the mentee.
Yeah, I know, Russ, you want to say something on that, Russ?
No, I was following along. I was just trying to go back through some of these comments and stuff. But yeah, you know, I just double back and you know, reemphasize everything that that she's saying there. You know, there's so many different functions that can happen back and forth, and so many different, you know, interactions between the two. That's why you really have to have a mentor that knows the whole game plan. You can't have, I don't think that you can have someone that's only specialized in one small area, because corrections is too big for that generally, especially if that mentee is someone who's very new to the process, very new to corrections, and really doesn't have a well-established idea of what the scope of corrections is.
Yeah, and can I also say something? 'Cause I see a lot in the comments about younger people training. I get it. I'm not a big fan of that either. The only thing is that when it comes to taking that role of being a mentor and obviously that relationship with a mentee, the reason why I'm using mentor is because I'm hoping that there's a want on both sides. I mean, that's where the perfect dance is, right? I mean, when you're able to teach someone who wants to learn and you yourself want to teach, that is such a beautiful dance, because now, again, you know, you're receiving information from someone who wants to provide it, who's going to go above and beyond, and you're just accepting it because you want to learn. A lot of the times right now, we have new boots that are coming in that feel that they're already know everything, like know-it-alls. Not a big fan of that. And that's pushing away the senior officers who wouldn't mind mentoring. But the problem is that when they go to say something, the person that's asking the questions isn't really asking the questions to grow, but rather asking the questions to challenge that position that they have. And sometimes they're very quick to point out maybe their training is better than the training they ever had. And again, I'm going to point out the academy. The academy is a big part of how these rookies are coming in. Somewhere along the line, the academy got to be teaching these rookies, hey, have respect for those that have walked the walk. Like, we could teach you everything, and sure, the training may be a little bit different than the training they took, but they've walked the walk for 24 years, 25 years. If there's a senior officer that decides that they're going to take the time and give you something, some piece of advice, you shut up and you listen. You know, that to me shows value for that person who's walking the walk, because guys, who knows the road they had to travel to learn that one thing that they taught you? You know, who knows what journey they had to go on? You know, the suffering, the sacrifices they had to make to teach you whatever that lesson may be. And then you're going to go ahead and minimize that lesson because you think you're coming in because you know it all. Well, now that messes up the potential for a good mentor and mentee relationship. But I do believe that a mentor has to be in a position to lead in some extent. So again, you know, maybe that experienced officer mentoring that younger officer, because the mentor has to be more than just, I say it and this is how it's done. A mentor has to have done it. I think that's the biggest key to me. A mentor is going to have walked the walk, because to me, that's how you're going to get my respect. But I'll go with Connie too. Connie, how important it is for, let's say someone that you're mentoring to have walked the walk. You're muted.
For me, if I am looking for a mentor, I need to know that I can lean on that person's experience. They're not telling me what they think I should do, but they've never done it before. Because I think what we find is that so much that people say, like, oh yeah, well, you should do this and you should do that. It's like, how practical is that? And if it was so easy to do, how come you didn't do it? Right. So it matters to me that the mentor that I have is able to kind of give me the play-by-play. They can see down the road because they've already traveled it, not because they read it somewhere, not because they heard it was a good idea, but they learned it firsthand and they're familiar with the potholes that lie ahead, right? They're familiar with the things that I'm going to need to develop in order to get there, in order to be successful in that space. And so, not to say that, someone can't just be good at their job and be able to teach people or mentor someone. I don't want to minimize that. There are some people that are really students of the industry and they can tell you tons of stuff, right? But I personally feel that it's important that if you're a mentor and someone is asking you for particular guidance or your expertise in an area, it's best you not misrepresent yourself. It's okay if there's someone else because I think that's the other part of being a mentor, that you can serve as a resource, right, to that mentee that you have. Okay, so I know here's some things you want to do. I got 5 people who I want you to connect with. I have 5 people who I'm going to have you support, or they're going to support you so that you can get to where you need to be. I don't think as a mentor you have to know everything, but it's cultivating that relationship, and that mentee is going to trust you and those 5 people that you've selected to be a part of that circle.
Well, Connie, you hit something so great, because you're right. Mentors may not know everything, but that's where the growth comes in. Sometimes a real good question could encourage growth on our end too, because now if I'm in charge of mentoring you and I took that responsibility, you asked me a question that I don't know. What becomes my responsibility now? Let me find out the answer. Because you're right. A lot of the times we just develop the path along the way. John Maxwell said, be a tour guide as opposed to a travel agent. Travel agents send people to places they've never been to. Tour guides, they're right on site. Sherry says, I think it's important to mention that you can mentor and inspire individuals from different directions. You don't have to be a supervisor to mentor. Some folks have a gift to inspire others. If you love your job, share your enthusiasm. You know what's great? I love that, Sherry, because they have this thing called, it's like 360 leadership. Yep. It's being a person of influence to everyone around you, top, bottom, and side to side. But I truly believe that. We had a story one time about I did it a while back about an officer that never made rank. And his biggest concern was on his last year, he knew he wasn't going to be given another opportunity to promote. And his big thing was about the legacy and impact he had, because he limited that legacy and that impact to the position he thought he had to attain. And then when you start asking him things, he realized that as an officer, he created more of an impact. So I believe in what Sherry's saying. It's not about the position. Because it's not the position that makes the leaders; it's the people that make the position. So I can guarantee you this, and I'm going to tell you the truth here. If I'm an admin and Russ was my officer, I would still have Russ leading me down a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, there's stuff that I can learn from that frontline experience that I'm far removed from now. So I do believe, I love what Sherry said, that inspiration and just your ability to have an influence does not mean or does not relate to your position you're in, but rather inwards and how you manifest that outwards. What's your thoughts on that, Russ? You're muted. Hey guys, am I doing this all show?
No, no, of course not. But no, can you rephrase that? I'm not quite sure.
Sherry said, I think it's important to mention that you can mentor and inspire individuals from different directions. You don't have to be a supervisor to be a mentor. Some folks have a gift to inspire others. So my thing about this is that when being a mentor doesn't always have to mean that you're above the person. It could mean you're next to them, or a mentor is not just about your position, but your things of your life as well.
Yeah, this is one of those things, where I talk about a lot of times, being eclectic in what you're doing with regards to learning these skills and stuff. So, if someone out there on the line who is, great at knowing the gangs and tattoos and stuff like that, you go and you seek out that person, right? If someone else, knows handcuffing techniques, you seek out that person. So you can be eclectic in it. And those people aren't necessarily, people that, have brass on your collar, because there's a lot of people out there that have some brass on their collar that don't know much about corrections at all. It's finding those people that are the subject matter experts, and better yet, if you can find people that are subject matter experts in multiple disciplinaries, right? And so, find those people and learn from them. Sometimes your only choice, especially if there isn't an FTO program out there, if there's not, some great training or something, is to turn yourself into your own training source by finding those people. Let them teach you, and then you take it back in, and eventually you become that master trainer, whether that's official or not.
And you know what, guys? I want you guys to check this out. So how does a leader or a mentor equip people to do their work and succeed at it? This is the best method they come up with. Step 1, you do it first. That shows you're competent. Step 2, I do it, and then you're with me. So that shows demonstration. Step 3, you do it, and I'm with you. Now I'm coaching you. Step 4, you do it, and I empower you to do it. And step 5, you do it, and someone is with you. And that's the reproduction. That's the part where it goes from you passing it down. But I'll tell you something, at any point where someone's not willing to accept that advice, or just thinks they know it all, you lose out on a big part of that reproduction, in which now there's a chance for other leaders to grow. Now we don't have that communication. And again, it puts us all at a standstill. But one of the things I like about that, again, is guys, think about that. Mentoring means that eventually you start to empower the other people to do your job. And I want to mention something else as we cross into that, guys. This is very important, and I'll go with Connie first. One thing about being a mentor is you have to work through your own insecurities. If you yourself are insecure about your position, then you are not going to be able to bring anybody up to where they need to be a leader. But Connie, what's your thoughts about a mentor that is still insecure about their position? Should they be even taking a spot as a mentor?
So I think if the mentor can be honest with themselves, right? Because like self-examination is always in order, or self-reflection, then there should be no issue in taking on a mentee, right? But I think that at the end of the day, as that relationship evolves, they should be able to actually have discussions with that mentee about that insecurity, right? Because if I'm your mentor, I want you to be better, right? I want you to be better than me, even though I'm still evolving, right? And I think that's the boldness, I would say, about when you take on that mentor role, is that there are some insecurities that will be either uncovered or you would speak openly about it, right? Like I remember having a mentor who never left the back of her desk. And she was like, I'm not a fan of having to walk through the walkway with all the inmates. And I was like, well, we work in a prison. Like it just, and so it's me trying to understand, how could you avoid walking in the hallway with inmates when it's your job to be in the midst and to be engaging and to understand what's going on the walkway. So when your staff come complaining, that you can actually provide them with support, with insight. Here's some things you can do. So if in fact I never saw that insecurity, I think I might have kind of hesitated a little bit to actually ask her questions about going on the walkway. It's something so simple, but it's like those we learn as a mentee. I was learning from her insecurity. And for me, it was like, I don't want to be that. Like, if I'm afraid of something, I'm going to want to figure out how to not be afraid of it. Can someone teach me a skill that's going to help me feel more comfortable with walking the walkway, where she completely avoided it? So I just think that, yes, there are going to be some insecurities, but there's still always goodness, right? So like my mom would say, you take the meat, you throw away the bones, right? There's always going to be goodness you can get from someone who has the expertise, who's willing to give that knowledge. And you may have to have another mentor to fill the gap that mentor doesn't bring.
Yeah, I love that. But when you're in the mentor position too, you have to make sure that your insecurities, because we all may have them, but the point is it doesn't prevent that other person from growing. Guys, that's a real look inwards. Because if you are a person that, is unsure of your value in the position you're in, and you believe that at any moment you could be replaceable, then you're not in a position to mentor anybody. Because the concern right now is you could be mentoring your replacement, but technically as a good mentor, you want to do that. That's the funny thing. You want to mentor somebody to the point where you're out of a job. Again, just figuratively speaking, but that's the truth. You want to help people grow so they can surpass you. But if at any point you're insecure about your position or the value of your work, that's going to play out in how you limit the person that you're mentoring, because you're not going to want them to go past you. And that's the sad thing.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
Because I think what's really important with what you said was that succession planning is always in order. Like building up the next leaders, having the next line of replacements in place, right? So here it is, you're holding this role and you're holding so tight, but like there are probably opportunities that await you to move up, right? And so what happens when you don't actually impart your knowledge to that person because you're insecure about your role, right? Now you have someone who may be inadequately prepared to step into this new space. And so I just wanted to highlight that because I think it was a really significant point that you raised about that leader or that mentor being insecure, that they're not feeling the best in their position. And so they're going to stunt the growth of that mentee.
Yeah. One of the things is if you're a leader and let's say, your skill is a 5 out of 10, you can't expect the people beneath you to ever go above a 4, so it's putting that lid on the leadership and development of people that you want to make into potential leaders. Andy asked a great question. I'll go with Russ first because this kind of touches into complacency. This is one of my greatest fears, especially on the administrative side. But what if your mentor does things against policy because they have the discretion? How do you approach that? Go ahead, Russ, and I'll compliment you. I want to talk too, but go first, Russ.
Okay, so let's tackle that, right? Okay, so you have a mentor that does things that are, outside of policy or, extra policy, if you will. So that in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. And I'm not telling you should break policy, but what I am telling you is sometimes what happens is people tend to adapt to things that policy either doesn't address or addresses incorrectly. So when you're looking at it, what you see as possibly not jiving with policy may not actually be the case. This person may have a deeper understanding. He may have been able to find a way that makes that jive with it, but it is a concern, right? And so what you need to do is you need to pick their brain and you need to be able to understand what it is, why they're doing it, how they can make it in some way actually align with policy. And I wish I had a better example to be able to give you, but that's where that knowledge of how things work in the real system versus the way they work on sometimes what we put down on paper But like I say, at the same time, you do have to address that incongruency, because you don't want to put yourself into a position where you are doing something that jeopardizes safety, security, law, or those other things that can put you in a jam. But that's not to say that this person may not have a better understanding of what's actually going on than the people that wrote that policy.
Okay, so let's also do this too. So here's my biggest fear, guys. My biggest fear is practice supersedes policy. Okay, to me, that's going to be my biggest fear. And that fear comes when you have senior staff that has become complacent and they start operating more in practice as opposed to what is really in policy. And then the sad thing is that we may go ahead and send our recruits next to them who, they're just learning by practice and they're not reading the policy themselves. So the advice I would do for you, Andy, right off the bat is the first thing you do when you enter a post, whatever, is you want to read the policy. If you want to read it, get an understanding of it. If you see that there's anything that's starting to stray from the policy, then you can directly, politely ask the officer or ask the person training you, hey, I noticed policy says this, but I noticed you've been doing this. For example, I noticed policy says you're only supposed to let out 20 inmates. I've noticed that there's 25 inmates out. It's a question that has to be asked. And sometimes the officer who's been complacent in their ways may not realize they're complacent. They may actually think that, well, I thought it was 25. You know why? Because they were trained by someone who chose practice over policy. So you don't know how long this is developed. So sometimes it takes that one question to make that person go back and say, I thought it was 25. And the reason why you want to mention that, guys, is I have seen people get in trouble, and then when they go to defend their position, they defend it from a practice standpoint as opposed to a policy standpoint. Now, the problem is the practice holds no weight. And then when you go to question them on it, they really feel that, I thought that was policy. So again, if you're in a position to mentor, or you're looking for someone to be your mentor, you need to make sure that you're in line with not practice, but just policy. And that's where, again, it's time consuming, guys. As a supervisor, you know what I'm doing, guys, all the time? I'm sending out at least every year a reminder of the policies and having the staff sign off on it. Because in a year, again, routine, complacency, things change and people don't realize how far they strayed from policy. So here's a reminder. Now there's liability on that too, because you're signing off that you read it. So don't mess up. Don't do anything foolish. But I'm also doing that to remind people, hey, have a look at this. It's been a while and it looks like your area is starting to, kind of run on its own, so maybe this is a reminder. But again, guys, that is a big concern for me as management, is that practice is breeding practice, which isn't always correct. And that means, in my mind, complacency breeds complacency. So again, there are going to be certain things, like Russ said, that senior officers may be doing. I get it. And they could be practices that, make sense for them. But in the meantime, you're beginning this career. You operate on policy and procedure until you can develop that discretion. But what's your thoughts, guys, on that? You want to go, Connie, or whoever?
Go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, Russ.
All right, I just want to take it. So first of all, we're talking, primarily here in my mind about mentors that have it going on, right? And so a mentor, an FTO that's giving you directions and stuff, they should always have not just a reason and a justification for what they're doing, but they should also be able to point out why they're doing what appears to be against policy, right? And one thing that crops up all the time, and and I can't say that it's bad, I can't say that it's good, is that we have things that countermand policy in the way of, memos and temporary orders all the time. So just because you've been taught it in the academy, just because you've seen it there in your post orders to some degree, doesn't mean that you necessarily have all of that information right in front of you. And it's kind of a beef with me when people, they start trying to run the whole institution on a bunch of memos that might, countermand, supersede each other and all this stuff. But overall, What I'm trying to get out here is this person that's mentoring you has been trusted to do it. So he or she should be on the ball about it. And so I'm looking for something more than just, oh, they're just deciding to countermand or go against policy or procedure here.
Yeah, well, the only thing is I want to separate the FTO from the mentor, because the mentor could be someone that's personally chosen by that officer. It doesn't necessarily mean they've been filtered through that chain. That was one of our concerns at the beginning. I mean, an FTO, I would assume, is holding everything to the highest standards. That's their job. Their training policy, believe it or not. So even as a field training officer, their job is to train the memos and the policy, at least until discretion has been told. But the other thing is the mentor is someone that could be chosen that's not in that official capacity. So my concern is if you take the position of being a mentor. So now if I take the position of being a mentor, I have to really be up on my game as well, because in the end, if I'm not up in my game, then I could be giving out bad information. And my biggest concern is that the rookie doesn't have enough experience to filter what's bad or what's good, even in the justification of the why. If that rookie asks why, I don't think they have enough experience at that point to really evaluate that why and to see why that why may be in conflict. So again, I know we talk about the memos, the policies and procedures, but at the very beginning, this is all that's going to save that officer at that point, because that's what they're going to lean on. That's going to protect them until they're able to develop that discretion through whatever it is that, because don't forget too, mentors, there has to be, hey guys, real quick, so you know, mentors have to have a level of trust, right? So if I'm choosing this mentee relationship, there's a foundation of trust, which basically means that I'm willing to take what you tell me into account. And literally, if I see you doing it, I'm going to try to be the best that I can be related to your terms, related to what it is that you're trying to do. So again, if you're taking that role and you have someone that's a blank template, it's your job and your responsibility to make sure that you teach them whatever it is that makes them protect their job. That's the key, because in the end of the day, that's my greatest concern. My greatest concern is that you could be teaching someone different methods that they won't be able to defend, regardless of the perspective of the mentor or whatever. But for the FTO, 100%. You know, the FTO is the one that has been filtered, should have an understanding of policy and procedure, and should be the one dictating that policy procedure. And also, I will say this, if there is something that works better, then that should be brought up to the higher chain of command field, and then we make that into a memo. Because again, corrections is always evolving. I get that. But in the meantime, when people have to go to protect themselves in their position, they have to refer back to what is written, especially if that rookie gets caught up and they can't explain themselves, because all they're going to say is, what did the memo say? What did the memo say? What did the policy say? Oh, I know what the policy said, but you know, Gangi told me to do it this way. What does the policy say? Now I just threw somebody else under the bus. What's your thoughts on that, Connie?
So I think it's always in order that we think about the liability, right? And I know we don't necessarily think that way, right? We're using our best judgment at all times based on the information that we have at our disposal. And so if the policy is what, you know, the mentee has in place, that's what they know. You know, someone wrote in the comments, you can never go wrong by following the policy, right? And I agree wholeheartedly with that. Now, are there times where there's some internal best practices and, you know, maybe we don't know the history of how it evolved? Because as the newbie, I don't know why we do it this way. But I think it's also, when you think about that trust aspect, right? The newbie is trusting that you're showing them the right way. And, you know, I think it's almost like a breach of contract, right? When you're not showing them the right way, you're just showing them your way, which may not be in alignment with the policy. So I just think that, you know, as we take on mentees, that we try to show them, so here's the policy, here's what we've done in practice, and give them the why, right? So that they kind of understand. I mean, they're still in that space where they're trying to figure out or to have some context to all of the policies, the procedures and such. But there is a trust that exists or that needs to exist when you have that relationship. And in order for that mentee to truly sort of advance in their careers in the right way, I think that there has to be a balance to that discussion. If we do things a certain kind of way in facility versus what the policy says, I think as a mentor, I have a responsibility to give that mentee both pictures, not just one.
Yeah, and I also think that the process must be measurable as well. I mean, if you're starting a relationship out, guys, mentor and mentee, right? And we're starting this relationship out, I'm not going to know as the mentor, if I don't measure anything, I'm not going to know how far we've gone. I'm not going to say there has to be an end game, because usually it is about continued growth. I mean, sometimes there is what you call maybe a finish line. Maybe I'm mentoring you to get into this position, whatever it is. But you got to realize something. Being a mentor is not just about the profession itself. It's also about personal life. It's overall growth. Mentors are more involved in that overall growth. And I believe it does have to be measurable. There's going to have to be some level of understanding if you're moving forward or not. Where were you 3 years ago to compare to where are you now? Look, I said 3 years ago. So it shows you how much time is usually invested. But I do believe the process must be measurable. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
Well, yeah, there has to be a metric for deciding, what the growth of this person is. When it's at the mentoring level and stuff, though, it's a lot less, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's just, not as official, if you were. When we look at it from the standpoint of what these training officers might be doing, then that's where you have to start, signing off on all the check boxes and things like that. So, I think that from the perspective of the mentee, if it's a little bit more on the informal side, they are kind of the ones that are deciding on whether or not this relationship is taking them to the next level, or at least giving them a string of new skill sets that they're able to use and that they're able to apply inside the prison walls.
Yeah, and I think that's great, Russ, because that's the communication then between the mentor and the mentee. Because if the mentor takes on this authoritative role and there's not this two-way communication, then the mentor is not understanding what the values, the beliefs, what this person is trying to get at. So therefore, they don't even know if this person is moving in the direction that they want to go to. So one of the things as a mentor is, do you understand what this person wants to do and how they want to get there? Because if you don't have that communication going, I don't know if we're moving forward. I don't even know if I'm setting you back. So again, if you're the mentee, and I do push this on the mentee, I agree. The mentee is going to have to understand themselves. Is this where I want to be? Is this who I want to become? And if not, end that relationship, because there's no value at that point if it's not taking you into a direction that you want to be. And again, that's if you come in, for me, I was looking to be professional. I was looking to kind of move up. So I'm looking for people that can help nurture me grow. But if I feel that I'm with people that are not mentoring me, they're play fiends, negligent, and they just don't lead by example, then I'm not moving forward. It becomes wasted time and effort. But Connie, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so there is but so much. So the mentor can only sort of support the mentee the best way they know how, right? And so I think that in that building of relationship, if the two are very clear on what the goals are, I think that the mentor has the influence to kind of help the mentee get there. But I do feel that there comes a point, if you guys just can't align on the direction or the approach that you're going to take, that relationship can be severed. And there's just an appropriate professional way to do that, and I think a lot of times we struggle to make the decision, because especially I'm just thinking, if I'm new and something just kind of doesn't feel right, but like I'm still getting to know my mentor, right? Maybe there's some method behind the madness. Maybe there's some nuance that the mentor knows, or it has some details about that I don't know. And am I prematurely sort of severing this relationship because I'm assuming that it's not going to get me where I want to go? So I just think, it's definitely a tightrope to walk when you're in that sort of relationship and you're trying to decide what's the right direction for you.
Yeah, guys, we're going to do one more area for the mentor, and then we're going to cross to a live Q&A, and then we'll answer whatever questions you want to ask, and we could go off topic. So for the people that were asking questions off topic, this would be a good time to resubmit it. But there's one more question I want to get to that I thought was related to the mentoring, and it is about where am I? How you have to blend the soft and hard sides of developing someone. So mentoring is not always going to be easy because, again, there's helping the person grow, but there's also candor in it all too. I mean, sometimes it's not going to be an easy road. Sometimes you both may have to hear things that you don't want to hear, you know, and I said both. I said both because, again, it's a relationship that should have value both ways. But I think when it comes to mentoring, you have to be prepared that there are going to be some rough roads ahead, and you have to be willing to do whatever you can to kind of make sure that you're both growing. And I would like to say growing together. I think that's part of this relationship, growing together. And if you're not, and there is something that's an obstacle, it's just not working, or you guys just don't have, you know, I mean, I would like to think you have to like the person you're mentoring too, to some extent. Then the relationship just isn't going to work. And then you have to make that difficult decision to say, you know what? We're both not going anywhere. Connie, what's your thoughts on the hard and soft side of developing someone?
Well, I mean, feedback is feedback, right? And it's not going to always be positive. That's just a reality, right? Sometimes you're going to hear things that you don't want to hear, but how do you develop if you don't ever get the feedback? That's real feedback, right? Like, you know, I think, yes, there's a tactful way to deliver feedback so that the person's confidence or self-esteem isn't demolished, right? Because we know that there are some tough things that may be said, and maybe the person had absolutely no idea that this was a shortcoming of theirs, or, you know, an area for improvement. And so now I'm getting this feedback, which may seem like this is the first time someone has ever told me this, but that doesn't make it less valid, right? So I think that, one, there is a tactful approach to providing real feedback so that the person will receive it well and actually work on whatever it is that needs to be developed. And then I think the other side of that is, as the mentor, you can't avoid giving that tough feedback because someone's feelings might be hurt. If you want the best for them and you want to see them grow and develop, you actually have to give them that feedback. So I think, you know, it's certainly not always going to be good news. Like, that's just a reality.
Russ, what's your thoughts on that, Russ, balancing that hard and soft side of mentoring?
Well, I don't have a soft side, so I don't have to worry about that.
Russ is going to tell you how it is, guys. That's just how he rolls.
That's just me. So, you know, I'll tell you what, when I'm mentoring someone, I like to just go out there and, you know, go at it hard, be a hard charger, try and stir up as much as I can, find as many felonies, make as many arrests, level as many charges as I can, and try and keep that balance between, you know, being preemptive and proactive and still accounting for staff safety. And that's just always been my way of approaching that.
All right, so guys, we're going to start answering some of the questions that are off topic now. So we'll start with John V. I don't know if he's still here, but he was nice enough to wait, I'm assuming. But he has a good question. How do you feel about getting promoted when you only have 5.5 years left, giving up days and going on off shifts? So this is basically taking a promotion later in your career. So let me have Russ go answer this one first, then we'll have Connie and then myself. But Russ, what's your thoughts about taking a promotion towards the end of your career?
You know, I think that if you're willing to do that, it's a great thing. You know, you're willing to, you know, take on and face some of those hard challenges and impart a little more direction, leave a little bit more of yourself behind for people that are coming along. I waited a long time. To promote. I was at 17 years, right? I just felt at that time that, you know, I still had more to do as an officer. And so I went ahead and I promoted. I did another 8-something years as a sergeant. And then I retired. And then I came back as an officer again, as a retired annuitant, because I felt like I still hadn't left enough of myself on the battleground. So if that's what you're going to do, man, God bless you for doing it.
Oh, wait, hey, guys, real quick before we go to Connie. Sherry says, you guys are awesome team. You present a very comprehensive perspective. Thank you. That means a lot to me because obviously we all know Sherry. I know definitely Connie does. And to hear that compliment come from her says a lot because she's also a pioneer in the profession as well. So I appreciate that, Sherry. And we're going to take you up on your offer to teach at MASCA in Atlantic City. So that's going to be fun. We're definitely going to start organizing that. I'm looking forward to that. Connie, taking a promotion towards the end of your career. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, I don't really think that there's a good or bad time, right? Like, I feel like, you know, some people are just not ready. And at whatever point in your career you are ready for that move, like that's the right time for you. I always feel that as you move up, there are things that you needed to learn in order to get you there. And once that door is now opened, to me, it feels like now you're ready for that next step. And so, I mean, yeah, there's some things that you might be sacrificing by taking that new role, but there's so much that you have to gain in taking on that new role. I think there's so much learning that happens as we promote and we see. I mean, I think it opens up our eyes just to how much bigger things are, how much more is involved in running the operation, because there's some things you just don't see at certain levels until you start to promote, and then you actually have a much clearer picture of how you can make significant and sustainable impact.
And you see what we did, guys? We gave you inward motivation. I mean, sure, I could say when you retire, you'll make more money, you know, external. But, you know, again, there's going to be a life adjustment in those last 5 years. You even mentioned specifically switching shifts. And, you know, I think ultimately you have to make sure that what you're shooting for, you know, it is inward. Is there something that you want to attain in the process that can help you fulfill that legacy that you're trying to create by the end of your career? Because the funny thing is, guys, I've seen everybody. This is the funny thing. I'm sure we all could agree to this. I've seen people that can't wait to retire. When the day comes, they're bawling. You know, it's like, what's going on? I don't know what else I'm going to do with my life. So then you have to kind of convince them that what they served here, that they had a purpose. And you know, it's like you can't wait for the day to come. And then when the day finally comes, it's like, wow, I can't believe it's here. And you're just in total shock. So I think you have to find out, you know, like what they're saying above is if there's an inward motivation, if there's a chance. I like the personal growth. I really do. I think that if you're chasing after something that you figure may alter your life a little bit, there better be some growth about that. That's personal of a goal you want to attend. I remember, guys, I wanted to go when I was going back to school to get my degree in psychology. It was in 2012, right when my wife was pregnant, getting ready to have a kid. And it just wasn't really the right time to go back to school. But it's never going to be the right time. It's just never going to be, you know, we have another kid, or it's just never going to be the right time. And next thing you know, it's just too late, you know? So I think that if you find there's value, if there's personal growth behind it, let that be your motivator, and that will help you get through whatever it is that you have to get through. But you do need something like that internal growth to kind of keep pushing you forward, because anytime you make a choice like that, especially if you only got 5, it could be life altering. But if you push it towards the fact that I'm looking to grow and maybe accomplish something I never did, then maybe you should do that before that becomes a regret. And it only becomes a regret if you never tried to do it. Because sometimes we try and it's just not in our hands. I get it. But that's if you try. And if you try and you just can't get it, it should never be a regret. It's only a regret if you don't try. So if you feel that there's something like Connie and Russ said that can help you grow and, you know, maybe get some last goal that you want to attain, then go for it. Don't make that a regret. Because the last thing you want is, in the end, to be surrounded by all your dreams. And they're wondering, why didn't you do anything? There's a good question here by Amy. I saw you, Amy. She goes, what's your thoughts on officers going on light duty and then putting them in direct intake pods? So I'll go with Russ first on that.
Okay, so first of all, we got a little bit of jargon there. Direct intake pods, I'm going to guess that that's mostly jail running, where you have some kind of contact with the initial arrestee coming in, and you being on light duty, okay, that doesn't sound right to me, because I'm
It
just
could
going
be
to
a
tell you
reception area too, Russ, for prisons too. It could be the initial intake area for prisons before they disperse them across the state.
right. I was going with the arrestee thing though, from the point of those people are usually coming in hot. They're usually, drunk on drugs. They have, a heightened sensitivity toward the fact that they're suddenly ended up back in jail or in jail for the first time or whatever. And you have some sort of, you have some sort of defect in your capacity to be able to respond to that. I'd like to meet who is, making up that particular policy, because obviously they haven't thought it very well through. Just my opinion.
Yeah, like for me, there should be no, especially for an officer. I know sometimes they're like, oh, no inmate contact. There shouldn't be any of that, because at the end of the day, the officers put in a post that they're going to need to respond. They're first responders. So light duty, that could affect, the response. I'm not a real big fan of that. I figure as an officer, if you are not capable of doing full duty, then it could be, again, you could be backup. What happens if something happens at that facility? You just don't run to it. We're expecting people to run and protect us. And also you could have a civilian that's relying on you as well. So if you get put on light duty, the only thing, as I said, I'm not a fan of it, because if you're in need of a response, you're not going to be able to respond. Oh, well, I'm on light duty, I can't respond. Yeah, that's not good. When you work as an officer, I don't care what post you're at. Your job is to respond if there's an emergency that requires you to respond. That to me, I know some places do that, or sometimes we watch out for our own too. But the point is, at any point you have to respond to something, and also you're working around inmates who are very unpredictable. So what does light duty actually mean? I'm not a big fan of that. Having said that, Joe says if you're on light duty, it means you were injured on the job. Light duty position should be away from offender contact of any type. Yeah, I just wish that if you were injured on the job, they did what's right and they pay you until you're 100% healed. And if not, then you get the disability and they pay you outright as well. I think when you're officers, here's the funny thing, guys. In order to cross into corrections and be an officer, technically you should be at the zenith of your health, because for us, they check on everything. But then as you're in your career, if you get injured or hurt, I guess that's okay. No, I mean, you should definitely still maintain that. So if you've been injured on the job, hopefully they pay until you're fully recovered. And if unfortunately, let's say you don't fully recover, unfortunately, if you can come into another post besides being an officer, or if you want to get out disability, but we do need people that are able to respond 100% effectively. You don't want people that are going to respond and they themselves become a liability, because now you're supposed to help me and now I'm turning around helping you. That's just my opinion. I mean, go either way with that. What's the best advice senior staff has given you? Mine was the only thing an inmate can do for you is get you fired. Connie, what's your thoughts? What's the best advice you were given?
I actually have a light duty comment. On the light duty issue, I know that I've worked in facilities where, if my nursing staff, for example, someone's pregnant, light duty would be them not actually engaging with the inmate, but doing more of the administrative duties, chart reviews. There are things that we could be doing that aren't necessarily engaging with the population. There's times where I've seen, female officers who are pregnant, not working in sort of the inmate areas. Their light duty is like working in classifications or working in more of an administrative capacity. But like I've gone through a lot with so in Connecticut, a lot of the labor laws and such sort of push for staff to be able to come in under this light duty classification. And having gone through some state prohibited practices and all that stuff, it really is, if they're hired and there is a job that they can do we should allow them to do it. But I understand the liability of having a light duty person in the facility at any point, right? Because usually there is some sort of injury, some medical reason why that person is not functioning at 100%. And so, I just think of the liability of that person walking, say they're walking down the hallway and they slip on something, right? That light duty injury now becomes like, we're now starting back at point A and they're out 100%. So I just think the liability associated with light duty is really just too much. And I don't know why we actually practice it, although I understand sort of some of the states have some laws in place that actually push us to kind of go back and, bring people on board prematurely.
You know what though? Why I find also to be a little complicated, by the way, just in case. And yeah, Texas pregnancy is considered temp disability, and if you cannot perform your essential job functions, then you cannot return until you have a release from a doctor saying you can. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me explain something. Here's the reason why. Also, when you work in facilities where people are bidded. Now, eventually, when you have people that are getting light duty, it requires us to move people around who are maybe bidded in those posts. That's one thing. And sad to say, guys, and I really don't want to, but you're going to have people that are going to manipulate that because they don't want to work around the inmates. You know what I mean? So the concern I'm going to have is that if I don't like this post and I keep on getting this post, I'm going to say, you know what? Get some doctor to write a note for me saying I require light duty. And now the person that's been in this post, because that may be my only light duty post, now all of a sudden I got to pull this person out and, put this person in. But again, for me, if you're on the job and you're an officer, you need to be available to respond. But again, that's just my thought. I've seen people get shifted around because people could be manipulating the system for light duty. I'm just haven't become a fan of it. I know you got to say something, Russ. What's up?
Well, I kind of look at it a little bit differently because there's an ebb and flow to corrections, right? And at any given time, we're going to have some people that are going to be out, and we're going to have some people that are, trying to make their way back. And so I kind of feel like it can be a useful thing, if we need some of that work that an officer can really do, something to do with classification, something to do with the mailroom, something to do with, some of the clerical and office things that we've got going on. So I think that, as far as, managing all of your positions, I think it's a good thing to have some of those things so that we can reintroduce those people that had to go out for some reason, to bring them back and keep some of those people who, like, if you have an officer who's maybe having a difficult pregnancy, or not even a difficult pregnancy, just a pregnancy, and you can put them in a position to be able to take it easy for a little bit and still have them be productive, even though, they're not in a position necessarily to respond, but they can still be productive as correctional officers. I think that that's a good thing, because I think that, we have to, in some ways, try and make prison as good a place to work as possible, because there's already so many negatives about it.
Yeah, I get that. Again, remember I'm saying if the person's out, they should still get some pay. My concern is always going to be that universal precaution, the people that are going to manipulate. Now I'm moving everybody around, and I got this one person who's bidded there, but again, I still believe the person should be paid, especially if they got hurt on the job.
There should definitely be limits, but that's why we have, people that are supposed to be smart writing policy and stuff, right? They should be able to figure out ways to put caps on the things, to try and find ways to keep it from being,
Yeah, but
abused.
Then we have things called HIPAA, Russ.
Well, yeah,
HIPAA is.
Yeah, but you know what? The thing is okay. You don't have it. Is a doctor going to sign off or not sign off?
All I got to do is know.
It doesn't have to be about HIPAA. It can.
All I got to do is know a doctor, and you'll be shocked the stuff that will come your way.
Okay, so then you set a time limit. So then you set a time limit on it. The maximum amount of time that you can serve in a light duty position is 3 months or something like that. What I'm saying is there's smart ways we can go about it to try and help, because it's such a difficult job to begin with.
Yeah, I just think I get it. I just think in the long run, though, my concern is that the people, we wind up all getting shifted around because the person may not even just like a post. I figured the department should step up. If you have someone that's injured, there should be some level of pay. They shouldn't be rushing that person back to work. I mean, that's what we tend to do a lot of the times. And we have a good question here. Of course, Robert Snavely drops the bomb. A very tough question here, but I've been retired since 2016. Is this gender identification becoming an issue in the correctional setting? All right, so I'll go with Connie first.
Oh, really? Yeah. So we know it's an issue, right? So I think I think it was an issue for some time now, and I think it only continues to escalate. In 2017 or 2018, I was actually the administrator for the male jail in Hartford, Connecticut. And we had gotten our first transgender patient come in, or inmate come in. And, you know, I remember my warden just saying, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And like, it was probably one of the most candid conversations I'd had with that warden, like, ever, because, you know, one of the nicest people I ever worked with, but he was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Like it's almost, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't, right? Because he's thinking, how do I protect this inmate? How do I make sure that I don't have the advocates at the door saying that I'm isolating this inmate? And then on top of that, here it was, I was ordering a bra from a female facility. He's like, what am I doing bringing a bra into a male facility? So it's like all these little things that I think, you know, we don't see those things highlighted, you know, on the news, right? We usually see, like, you know, transgender, like there's always like the worst case scenarios that we see on the news. But I think just all of the little intricate details of managing the population internal to a facility are the things that we really are struggling with. Because I think, yes, we don't want to end up it looking as though we're trying to isolate anyone. Then there's that, well, you can't just create a housing unit just for them. We're creating a situation if we do that. So I think there's just so many things that we are trying to navigate as we manage not even just the transgender, but the various gender identities and all of that that's going on. So yes, it is hard.
Right. The biggest concern right now is where you can properly, safely house a transgender inmate. But the concern is the universal precaution, because, you know, sad thing is that they may not need a proper diagnosis for mental health. They could just go by self-declaration. You know, it depends on how powerful mental health diagnosis holds weight, because mental health diagnosis should be supported by some evidence prior. I mean, you could look at their license, who were they when they came in. Sometimes you can call the families to see what type of history the individual has, you know, and then obviously some level of treatment. Are they taking hormone pills? Are they doing something to show, you know, that they're committed? But the concern is that when the declaration carries more weight than a professional's opinion, well, that's when we start to become weary, because we don't know if the person is, you know, really transgender, or if they are playing the game because they want to go to a female facility. And the funny thing is, guys, is some of these transgenders that come in, they could come in with some major crimes, including sexual assault. You know, so the concern is now is that if you have someone that manages to get through the system and they wind up being approved to go to a house that matches their gender identity, so a male who says that they're female now going to a female facility, are we putting the females at risk? And there's going to be limits too in how you can house that transgender inside the correctional facility. You know, so the key of it all is, like Connie said, when the transgender is under review for housing, that is the time where you may be able, I don't want to use the word isolate because I know people are afraid of that word, but that's when they could be housed alone, because again, we're trying to determine where that inmate needs could best be met, where that inmate could safely be placed. So obviously an effort to protect the inmate until you've identified this inmate is better suited at a male facility or female facility, you can keep the inmate away from other inmates until that decision is made. Now, if the decision is made to keep the inmate at a male facility, which is not a decision that's taken lightly, when they make that decision, guys, to house the transgender in a male facility, I will guarantee you it's usually based on the threat that that inmate could pose to the female population if they were to ever get transferred over there. So once you get the vote, and then the process now is to move that inmate, you know, you always have to be wary of how that inmate's going to be housed in the female facility, because, you know, there are certain times if you now, by the way, guys, it's a great question that Rob asked, because it is a big concern across the country right now. The concern is that a lot of people are focusing on the needs of that, let's say that 1 or 2 transgenders that are in the system, but they're not realizing that that transgender may be, you know, vulnerable here, but when you move them over to a female facility, now they're the aggressor, or they have the potential to be an aggressor. So you have to be able to balance the need of that transgender inmate, making sure that person's safe. And then also, if we're going to put them in a female facility, are they going to be safe? So a lot of it is really what the male institution is able to do. So let me just explain this real quick, because this is important. And by the way, if you guys are front line, listen to me on this, because this is where the biggest conflict is. But I want you to see and understand why this is being done. As the PREA coordinator of any facility, our job is to make sure that we're in line with PREA policy. And part of PREA policy, again, Prison Rape Elimination Act, is to make sure that that transgender is housed in a manner that's safe, and the transgender gets everything they need, like Connie said, the bra or whatnot, right? So with that said, sometimes what happens is when you have someone trying to manipulate the system. Now, guys, we're talking about the wolf. There's always going to be someone out there that is going to lie and want to get to that female facility. And I don't want that being done on my watch. I don't. Just like no one else here would want that being done. I don't want to send an aggressor to a spot where they can, you know, do whatever the hell I don't want that. I don't want that on my conscience. So what I'm going to do at my level is I'm going to make sure I'm able to provide that inmate with everything they need, so we don't become the excuse as to why we had to move them. So if they need extra time in the shower, if right now, if they want to be stripped by females, because guys, that's the thing right now. Sorry, guys, can't argue that either. The inmate, if they are transgender, has the right to choose which gender they could strip, that can strip them. Am I a big fan of it? No, because again, people can fake the funk on that. But if that's what the rules say, my job is to abide by those rules. So the thing here is that you want to make sure that you exhaust all effort to house that inmate at your facility. Now, if by chance they decide that we're going to go ahead and move this inmate to a female facility, and the inmate, let's say later on, poses as a risk, they can't look back at my facility or our facility and say it was our fault. No, we gave everything the inmate needed. We provided them with her with extra showers, female strip, the bras, the panties, the female makeup, whatever it is that they get. We gave them everything, or gave her everything, so we met their needs. So now when something does happen at that female facility, you can't blame our facility, because that's what they'll do. They'll say it was this facility that forced the move. At this point, guys, the sad thing is everybody's pointing the finger as to what to do. Now, Connie mentioned something that I wish we could do. It's just, and guys, I'm speaking in general for the country, is to make a unit. But there's also another concern. We do have, obviously, real transgenders, and we have to make sure people don't fake their way into those units. Because now you can have an aggressor fake their way into a transgender unit and then start attacking our real transgender females. So again, how you try to house them is if you have any inmate that has a history of sexual, acts, that, deviance, whatever, an aggressor, a sexual aggressor, they are called aggressors. They cannot be housed with a vulnerable, which means these are people that are vulnerable to, being sexually assaulted or vulnerable of being taken advantage of. So you don't have an aggressor partnered with a vulnerable. You can have a vulnerable partnered with another vulnerable, or vulnerable partnered with a neutral. But sometimes you have people who are aggressor and vulnerable. So let's say you have a transgender who does have a history of sex crimes. Now they're an aggressor, and now they are vulnerable. So who do they get housed with? A neutral. There it is. But guys, it's a very complicated issue because when everybody's focused on the one, the conflict comes that we're focused on the many. History of who we are in corrections, universal precaution. Everybody wants to focus on the rights of the one, and then we're trying to tell people, hey, I get that, but the problem is that right's going to oppress the many, but no one cares until something happens. So all I'm trying to say is you don't want to be that person that's in the middle of that to blame. And Joe says we don't isolate them. However, we do strip search them away from other gen pop. That's part of it too. Hey, Russ, I know you're in California. I know you retired not long ago, but were you starting to see the, I'm not saying a pun here, but did you start seeing the transition?
We never really had many that were like that. I think that the biggest problem with the whole thing is that it's just become stupidly politicized, right? If people would just, try and take all of the rocket science out of it, and go back to, just going by the plumbing, not what's going on inside their head. And then from that, try and discern how much of a threat they are to someone else and how much other people are a threat to them. And then put them in the right buildings and quit trying to worry about how hurt their feelings are based on who's stripping them out or not, because it's a ridiculous amount of hoops that people are jumping through. And it doesn't do anything to enhance security. It destroys security over and over and over again. And so that's my feeling on it. I realize it's not popular, but that's the way I am.
Yeah, and I hope we answered your question, Rob. I mean, it's a complex issue because, like Russ said, I mean, there's different perspectives coming in, but ultimately, I get what Russ says too because it's that universal precaution. Universal precaution is I don't want to put a man in a female facility. But having said that, some cases.
One thing just to show you, though, how hard it is. You talk about, you don't want to put a man in a female facility and everyone goes, oh, yeah, because he presents a threat. Yeah, he does. But guess what? The population that's inside there also presents a threat to him. And so a lot of people don't realize that. That's why I say it would be much easier if we just took the rocket science out of it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. Yeah, that's what I was getting at. The thing is ultimately, you're still responsible for protecting that one inmate. So it's very complicated. It's an issue right now that we're still in the process of trying to figure out. There are some, universal catch-all solutions, but unfortunately, they're extremes. And, it's the complication always, the funny thing about politics is they operate on extremes. And then us that try to figure it out have to move things to the middle. And the middle is where it gets messy, but it doesn't help when, we got both extremes and no one's making an effort to bring anything to the middle. And that's where we come from. I sent this question to Russ in Facebook. Is there an officer code, don't tell, lie for them, etc.? If you go against the code, how does that affect work relationship? It's talking about the blue code of silence. I actually, Russ, I go first.
Yeah, because I actually did talk to him earlier. Hold on, let me just find it here so I can talk a little bit about what I told him. But anyway, yeah, basically there is amongst, some people within the profession, this idea about a code of silence, right? But you know what? I never look at anything in isolation and by itself. And so one of the things that people always talk about, is they talk about the idea about loyalty. Well, loyalty to who and for what is the question I always ask back. Because if someone is asking me to put my liberty on the line, to put my career on the line, I mean, is that really looking out for me? So I always put it back on them. And, I tend to want to say, why are we doing this? Why can't we just live up to a professional ethos that requires us to tell the truth and to act appropriately and to, make sure that we're justified in what we do and that we don't feel that we have to take things into our own hands and be little Nazi and vigilantes out there. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect, because I always like to address the question from every possible angle, is what is being done by some administrations out there that fosters that idea about we have to protect ourselves. What is it that they're doing? How are they not treating us fairly? Are they not conducting fair investigations? Are they being subjective about the use of force code and deciding, who has applied it correctly and who hasn't without any actual standard? So these are the things you have to ask. Ultimately, what you want to do is you want to bring into your institution, you want to cultivate professionalism at every level so that there is no code, so that everyone understands that, hey, if I go outside the bounds, these guys are either going to try and pull me back and try and help me, but they're not going to cover for me. And that I'd better be on the idea that if they do try and cover for me, no, I'm going to step forward. I'm going to tell the truth first on what my stupid ass did. I mean, if you can't be at that level inside corrections, I don't know what you're doing inside of it, because we simply can't function like that anymore. And then the second thing I tell is to the supervisors, the management, and the administrators, what is it that you're doing to back your staff or not back your staff that makes them feel that they have to rely on some arcane code about vigilantism? You're the ones that aren't living up to the professional aspects of this, if that's the reason that they're doing it. So that's my feeling on the subject.
Yeah, and Andy, if I may, we have to kind of understand why it could happen. Okay, so first off, it's a lot of people think, and again, guys, this is just a perspective. So if we're ever going to address an issue, we have to understand why the issue happens, right? So in this case here, the blue code of silence, whatever it is, the reason why I believe sometimes it happens, and guys, by the way, it shouldn't happen. Our job is to police each other 100%. I like what Joe says. Regardless of loyalty, if you're dirty, I'll be the first one to walk you out. If you're a good boss who made a simple, stupid mistake, I'll be the first one to go to your bond. I love that. But I want to mention something. We have this thing. It's like this. We want to belong. I mean, if this makes any sense, right? And sometimes our want to belong supersedes all logic, right? So what the problem is sometimes you have people that want to do the right thing, but their fear is, I don't want to be an outcast. So I know Russ pointed at administration. I'm also going to point at the peers, because when I had an issue, it was my peers that made it complicated for me to report it. They want to come around later on. Oh, Gangi, yeah, but where were you when I needed your support? So my thing is that if someone has to do the right thing, we as peers first have to support what it is that person needs to do. Because if we don't support it, it doesn't matter any other level. All that matters is how we view each other, because we're around each other. So I think the biggest concern we have for that officer that may be going through it is that they're afraid that they're going to be an outcast for doing the right thing. And then in a world where we depend on each other for safety and security, are they going to hesitate when I need their help? Are they going to run to my code if they hear me calling for help? So I think the end result here is that we have to promote an environment that really shows the fact that, hey, if something's wrong, we got you. We'll support you as you got to do what you got to do to correct whatever it is. Or I think that it gets lost in the sauce when people have to step up, and the peers are what make it more difficult. Connie, what's your thoughts on that too?
I think that as professionals, there could be zero tolerance for it. That's just, my thought about any kind of code, because at the end of the day, you may be thinking to protect someone, but you don't know how else they've made us vulnerable as a system. You don't know how else they've made us vulnerable as our institutions, right? Like, so what else is there that person could be doing that puts us all in harm's way? And that is the thing we always have to think about. And, to Russ's point, it's not on you because you're doing the right thing. It is on the person who put you in that position to even have to think about it, right? Because clearly they weren't thinking about you and what that would look like. Because if you don't come forward and say something, right, then are you complicit? Are you involved? Are you an accomplice? Like, it's just messy. And so, I know, people don't necessarily want to come up. You don't want to get anyone in trouble. And how is everyone else going to look at me after I come forward and say whatever? I think at the end of the day, if we are thinking about sort of that holistic safety, it is safety of everybody when we come forward and we bring issues forward.
I know, Russ, you got something, Russ, right?
Yeah, just one thought here. If we really want to make things better for ourselves in this area, right? When these codes of silence got started at whatever institution you're at, and they don't necessarily exist anywhere, because people got together and they decided, hey, this is the way we're going to act when this happens, right? So if you can do that, you can also go to the other side where you can say, look, this is the way we're going to act day in and day out with regards to these situations where a code of silence may or may not be advantageous to us. And instead of having a code of silence, we're going to expect you to carry your own water. If you screw up, we'll help you out, but we're not going to lie for you. We're not going to, clam up and stuff. We're going to make sure that you're able to, present the best case for yourself that you can. And we're going to take it that step further beyond that is, hopefully if everyone gets on the same page, right? That, maybe some of the managers and stuff will say, you know what? We have your back. We want you to operate as competent correctional officers. We want you to feel that when you're making that judgment call, that we're going to be there. You don't have this necessity for acting like a code of silence is necessary. And that's where real professionalism comes in, not some, little drama bound idiots and stuff that don't understand what their policy is about, what procedure is about, and what the law is about. Because ultimately, our main loyalty is to that oath that we took when we raised our hands, remember, and we said we swore to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and to whatever our state is to the best of our ability. So help me God. Okay? Live up to your oath. That's all.
Yeah, I remember, guys, I remember during COVID, we could get Joe in if you Joe says he has something he wants to say. So let me hold on, Joe. I'm gonna send you an email, Joe. Joe, give me your email in the chat, Pompano. Give me your email. I want to mention something real quick. I was at a Boston market getting food for our Thanksgiving, COVID Thanksgiving. It's true, guys. And there was a wait because I had to get there like at fucking 9:30 in the morning. And as we were there was a big line, and there was okay, Joe. Hey, Joe, you know what, Joe? Next time I want to bring you on. So next Tuesday, guys, we do a live every Tuesday at 9 p.m. We're probably gonna be talking about report writing. I'm gonna have Joe come on. So Joe, even if you have to work, take a day off. So I'll get you on Tuesday if you wanna come in now. Yeah, all right, I'll email you. Let me just finish my thought, and then while I get them to speak, I'll send you out a message. We were going back and forth, and as I said, the one person, it was about a discussion about how we protect our own and stuff like that, and they believed it was rooted in corruption. And I said I disagree. I think you may look at it as we're protecting our own. I just think that a lot of us, I'm not saying it's right, we have the fear of being an outcast. And I think that fear makes us kind of just worry about what's going to happen if we do the right thing. So I said that the only problem is, and I did agree with them a little bit, is if we had more support from our peers, then you would have more people stepping up and doing the right thing. So again, guys, if you're listening to this, or if you want to pass a message, if you want to stop corruption or not, if you want to, if you want to promote people to do the right thing, like Russ said, police our own and stand by that oath, then don't be a hypocrite. If someone has to do something because it's the right thing, then you go ahead and you have to, support that person because it's the hardest thing they're ever going to have to do in their lives. But it becomes a little bit easier if you are showing them support. Would you agree with that, Connie?
For sure. I mean, who doesn't want to feel supported though, right? Like, at the end of the day, there's nothing that's going on in the facilities where you don't want to feel as though you have the support of the people you work with, as well as the support from management. And I think one of the things that as I'm looking at this tightrope walking, all I can say is that, it is walking a tightrope, and it is this constant trying to always make sure you're on your P's and Q's, you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing per policy, but also just understanding that there are going to be times where, it's hard. I mean, I don't want anyone to think that, these aren't tough decisions and we're just kind of throwing advice out there just willy-nilly. We understand that there are other dynamics at play. And so, you got to do what is the right thing to do.
Yeah, Connie, that was powerful too, because I think the courage comes from listening to this advice and applying it. I think that's what, when I get like a message or an email that says, hey, Gange, what you said in the episode the other day was great. I was able to do this. Or the other day, Tiffany was using Russ's STAR method. I mean, that goes beyond, to trust us at that level, that you're now going to, use something that we're providing into the real world is what brings value to this channel. I would love to get more people to kind of share their stories and maybe pick out a moment that, of something that we gave that they were able to apply. What do you got, Russ?
So I was just going to point out that a lot of this that we've been talking about right now comes back to what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks with regard to leadership. If we have leaders out there, these are people that we're willing to follow. And if these are the people that are willing to put this kind of information out there, to put these kind of ideas about the type of things that we want to cultivate within our facilities, within our institutions, in order to not be beholden to these ideas about, wall of silence, the green wall, all those things. Those people are the ones that really need to step up and march us toward that direction. And if they have the right answers, and if they're able to, make these kinds of sort of abstract ideas more concrete in how we can function in a system where we're not reliant on the code of silence, then, more power to them. Those are the kind of leaders that we need. Those are the kind of leaders that corrections is looking for in this day and age.
Yeah, and guys, I'm going to tell you something. In the end, obviously, I agree. I mean, it moves the team forward. I mean, the last thing you want is someone holding you back or painting that negative label. Craig says my jail was easy. If they didn't go all the way with the surgery, they didn't get put in with females. Oh, he's talking about the gender topic. Instead, they got placed in a special needs unit for people with mental illnesses. Yeah, it is a very touchy subject. Joe says, over my years, I've seen those personalities who try to be blue or gray wall until it lands them in federal court. Then not so much. They got a different outlook. I'm going to tell you something, guys, too. One more thing. Sometimes and guys, I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. I promise you everything I try to put out there is as truthful as possible, is that sometimes people have to really identify that something is wrong too. Like if I'm surrounded by people I trust, people I relate to, and they start doing something foolish, I actually may be a little blind at first, especially if I'm new and the situation's ambiguous to me. Like if I'm going through a situation that's ambiguous, I look for the people that I know and trust to define that situation for me. So if I have people that are doing something foolish, but, they're people I trust and they ensure me everything's okay, and I'm new to my career, it could be a little bit confusing. But then that person also has to listen to that gut feeling. Something wasn't right that happened today. And you can't let that set in. You have to investigate that. And I promise you, if you go on that feeling's going to motivate some good questions. And then you're going to realize, those people I trusted, they were doing something wrong. And I think a lot of times when rookies get caught up as a witness to something, I do think sometimes they truly may not understand what was happening because they maybe have 100% trust to the people that are involved. So, again, they're going to them to define whatever that ambiguity is. But they know something's wrong or something's not right. Like what Joe says, trust the gut. And then and what sometimes most people do is, I'll just push that feeling down. No, let that feeling bring about the questions that you need to, figure out what just happened, and then find out the people that you thought you trusted, they're the ones that are going to destroy your career. What's your thoughts on that, Connie?
So when it comes to that, like, I think your internal compass is always going to lead you in the right direction, and typically, if there was something that made you think twice or second guess, then there's usually something wrong, right? And, I think we do have this trust, and we want to see the best in our colleagues. And so we can rationalize just about anything, right? Like, we can find those justifications to sort of make it right, or to help us come to terms with the fact that someone who we've trusted is doing something that's not trustworthy, right? And so I just feel like if you find yourself in a space where you're making excuses and you're making justifications, then you have to know that something is actually wrong, and you have a responsibility to step forward and address it. One of the things I remember when I first started in corrections, I want to say maybe in my first 6 or 7 months, like, I ended up becoming a union delegate. And I remember having like a union meeting, and one of the head folks of the union at the time was like, we never jeopardize another union member's job. And, that just didn't set well, because I didn't understand. I'm like, what do we mean by that? Right. So that means if someone's doing the wrong thing, you never come forward. And so the fact that that was something that was told to a group of us, it wasn't like it was just told to me, as the delegate, it was told to everyone. So it was almost like, you've got to look out for each other. And I don't know that people can recognize, or sometimes, especially being new, that they have the confidence that even in the looking out for each other, that possibly coming forward is me looking out for you.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you something that really is based on the reputation and respect we have for each other. On the last question of the day, guys, before we lock up, we'll take it from Andy. And then next week, I think we're going to go into some report writing. Again, we'll discuss that for maybe the first hour, and then we'll cross into an open forum. We're trying to build the audience, so it's great to get 20 people who actually want to discuss work after work hours. Hopefully they're not doing this during work. Andy asked, how do you break away from those people and still remain trusted and not be isolated? What if one of those people are your partner and you have to work with them? I'll go first on this. I do want to read Joe's advice. Andy V, you're not there to be liked. You're there to do a job. If you do your job with integrity, you'll get your own respect from your peers. Don't seek it. I love that advice. And I actually want to feed off on what Joe just said. We attract like-minded people. So if we go in as professionals, the people around us should be professional because they know what to expect. I remember someone telling me a story on this channel that when they were a recruit and they had just entered the academy, the person had no problem standing up and saying right in the middle of the class, I have no problem reporting anybody that does anything corrupt. And always everybody looked at him, but guess what, guys? As he did his career, it got the right people next to him, because the rumor spread about what he said. It was a big thing. And it only invited people that were like-minded that wouldn't mind hanging out with him, just didn't have the courage to say it. And the people that didn't hang out with him were the ones that are like, oh, okay, maybe this person is not someone I want to work with. But I will say one thing, guys, you set the temperature. So if you're professional and you do what's expected, the people that are doing something foolish won't do it around you. A lot of times people say, well, you worked with this person for so long. How did you not see them doing this? Because I'm a professional. And around me, they wouldn't, because they know what I'm about. So there's always a good chance that good officers may not see what bad officers are doing, because the bad officers aren't going to do it around the good officers. And I'll guarantee you, if I did see them doing it, I would have said something. So my concern is, if there's people that isolate you for doing the right thing, or if there's people that just don't treat you the right way for doing the right thing, they may not be people that you want to be around anyway. They may be the people that, will set you back in your career or put you in situations where you don't want to be in. So again, in this profession going in, don't be so quick to jump and belong to something, and just be willing to accept, whoever comes your way. Start this career being professional, having that integrity, connect yourself to other people that carry that same value. And then as you start to move up, they'll never see you as a hypocrite. Never. But what's your thoughts on that, Russ?
The way that I like to look at it is that's the point at which it's time for you, not to slough them off, not to separate yourselves from them. It's time for you to take the reins. It's time for you to move yourself into that position of leadership, and to, press that idea about professionalism forward from that point. I've served with so many, excellent officers, all of them, hard hitters, tough as nails, knew their stuff. They could spend, 40 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, dealing with what they're doing as far as a use of force, perfectly justify it, have all the right answers, and never have to go into those gray areas, those dark areas where, we put a tune-up on him or some BS like that, right? You can hold your head high and be that, tough as nails, perfectly righteous officer, just as easy as it is to be, like a skell and just doling out, stuff on the bottom. So it's that point at which you want to take the reins. It's where you want to move forward. It's how you want your institution to be. And, there's nothing, harder or better than doing that and being that ultimate consummate professional. I hope I explained that right.
I think it was perfect, Russ. And what about you, Connie?
Like this, I don't know. I'm in a space at this point where, maybe earlier on in my career, it's like belonging is natural, right? We all want to belong. We all want to feel like we're part of the team. And, it's hard to step out and not be a part of the team, or to not be accepted by, your brothers and sisters. And so I can see where the dilemma stands, but I also think about the way the career advances, right? Like, people don't forget when you're caught up in something. People don't forget when you weren't operating from a space of integrity, or when you weren't always doing the right thing. And so I would just say, you don't want a certain reputation following you for the rest of your career, right? You want to make sure that you are doing the right thing, and you're operating from a space where you can sleep at night. You're operating from a space where, if you get called to the red carpet any particular day, you got to stand in front of a judge, your actions are justified.
Yeah. And guys, that's the key, guys. I mean, right off the bat, who you connect yourself to could either lift you up or make you fall. And it starts from day one, because even as you move up as a supervisor, if you're going to be seen with any level of integrity, it's going to start by who you connected with at the beginning. Because those are the same people that are going to, when you become a supervisor, they're going to want the easy way out when they get in trouble. So start that level of professionalism right from the get-go, and they'll know what to expect from you as you move up. Hey, Russ, you have anything you want to say in closing?
I just want to say, I love being here. I love doing these chats. And I hope everyone out there is going to take this stuff to heart. They're going to figure out ways to apply it. They're going to figure out ways to be a better mentor or a better mentee. And they're going to strive to, really push the profession forward. Other than that, I want everyone out there to stay safe, stay nervous, and we'll see you next week.
Nice. And Connie, what do you got?
I just want to say, I really appreciate, how engaged, our audience is, the questions, they really do keep us on our toes, but, they also, force us to pause and kind of just think about, you know, those times in our careers where we may have questioned something, or, you know, we felt a similar way based on some of the questions that are being asked. And, you know, I think for me, it's just an honor to be able to serve as a resource so that these questions can get answered. Because to your point that you made about, you know, senior officers, you never know what experiences they had that got them to a particular point or got them to practicing a certain kind of way. And, you know, I wish I had more of that insight imparted on me by other non-uniformed employees, you know, whereas most of my insight came from custody officers who just, they wanted to make sure I wasn't out there doing nothing stupid. But, you know, I appreciate that the audience is really just asking such great questions and allowing us to be a part of their journey.
Yep. And guys, you know, again, next week we'll do a dialogue on report writing. You know, a couple of us will be out in Nebraska from August 10th to the 13th. Myself, Connie, we'll try to get Russ out there. We'll try to get Soto. We're going to have William Young, Gary Cornelius, and we're going to kind of have an open forum discussing leadership, manipulation, bridging the gap between civilians and custody. I heard there's a problem there. Heard there's a little bit of a problem there. I think it's a great dialogue because every time we do these live feeds, we leave with more knowledge. And then we also leave with other show ideas because we see where there is a need for something, especially by the questions that are asked. So it really does matter what the community provides. So again, thank you guys. Just to give some shout outs, JR, GS Crippler, Joe, thanks for being a part of this. Andy, we also had to move a little further up because I know we had some more people. Moyle, Craig Nelson, you know, Chris, you know, the list goes on. But guys, thank you for being a part of this community. And as always, guys, my book's on the market too, Inmate Manipulation. You can find it on Amazon. And guys, if you haven't, don't forget to subscribe. Try to get people to subscribe. Let's build the community up. Because another thing, guys, YouTube promotes us on the algorithm based on the engagement. So the more we support each other and the growth, the more we start bringing in people who are from the outside looking in. Duty Ron, who was on this channel for a while, he was commenting. We're going to be on his show again. And he has a lot of people from the outside looking in. I believe me and Russ were doing a show on Sunday. We did a show last week on Sunday, and we got some very unique questions that were asked our way that we knew came from people that were outside the profession. And I got emailed soon after from one of them who said this is not what they're getting from the other prison ran channels. So the whole time they're being taught this information or being told this information, and then we're spitting them with the truth, and it blows their mind, but it makes sense. So that's the great thing. You know, so somewhere along the line, they know something's not right, but they don't know where to go to get the right answer. Now we have that venue. So again, helping me push the message out there, helping us push the message out there, being part of the message. That's how we change things, guys. We're invested in growth. We have now grown towards each other. Let's continue to grow with each other. So as always, guys, the show's tipped up. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post my video. Stay safe.